So, for the past 2 months, my pregnant sister-in-law has been living with our family. She needed a comfortable place to crash during her pregnancy, and the apartment that she shares with 3 roommates was not really ideal for her situation. She is 22 and moved here about a year ago, right after she graduated, to try and make it as a model. So far, she's been somewhat successful at it and has managed to secure some modeling assignments. But that was put on hold a couple of months back when she got pregnant with her current boyfriend. They've been together for just 6 months, but she said she wants to keep the baby for her own reasons. She can't live with her boyfriend, though, since he stays with his parents and is financially dependent on them. 2 months ago, a couple of weeks after she found out she was pregnant, my in-laws contacted my husband and asked us if we would be willing to help her out and let her stay with us for free for a couple of months. At the time, we were more than happy to do so because she used to be a pretty sweet girl. But I guess staying in the city has changed her or something, because when she moved in, she was a completely different person from what I was used to. I have known her for almost 7 years, since that's how long my husband and I have been together, and we used to get along quite well before she moved here. My husband's hometown is a farming state, and his parents are also farmers. But he decided to attend college here, where we live right now, and would go back home every weekend since it was just a couple of hours of driving. He and I met in college and got married after dating for 2 years. We even have a 3-year-old son now. I always got along quite well with his family, as he did with mine. His parents are simple folk, and so was my sister-in-law. She was quiet and sweet and actually used to put her brother on a pedestal. That was a huge part of the reason why she decided to move to our city after she graduated from college. She wanted to follow in his footsteps and find success here because she did not want to work on the farm. Because my husband and I had already built a life for ourselves, we were able to convince her parents to send her as well. Even though they were kind of skeptical because she had never stayed away from home before, we helped her out and convinced my in-laws to just send her without any second thoughts. We told them that we would be there to take care of her if she needed any help, and that we were confident that she would be able to make something of herself here since farming was not her thing. When she moved here, we had expected her to stay in touch with us because we were actually the reason her parents eventually came around to accept her decision to move. For the first couple of months, we did stay in touch. We helped her find an apartment and showed her around the city and stuff. But then she just started fading away from our lives. After she had settled in, she kind of stopped calling or bothering to stay in touch with us, and we made our peace with it as well. We believed that maybe she was too busy to keep in touch constantly. So we hadn't exactly been close for the past couple of months and had only spoken on the phone a couple of times. We didn't even know what had been going on in her life until we found out from her parents. Even then, we had been happy to help her out until she showed up and, for whatever reason, she had changed into a complete diva. She hadn't yet become a successful supermodel, but she already had the personality for it, if you know what I mean. She had developed a bit of an attitude problem and had started acting like she was too good for us, especially her brother. She had a lot of complaints about everything with regards to our lifestyle, from the food we ate to the bed sheets for the guest room where she was staying. This was new and shocking for us, and we had no idea where all of this was coming from. But we tried our best not to let it get on our nerves, even though it was pretty annoying behavior. We figured that it was probably just a phase and maybe she had picked up this kind of behavior from her roommates or something. Nevertheless, it was still very new for us. It also really bugged me that she had so many complaints about the way we lived. Because even though we are not exactly poor folk, we aren't billionaires either. So we had a pretty normal lifestyle, since both my husband and I are architects. It's not like she was contributing to any of the expenses, so I didn't understand why she was so comfortable complaining about everything instead of just accepting whatever she had. But my husband and I did not say anything to her or to my in-laws because we had already made a commitment that we were going to let her live with us until she figured out something for herself. So far, we had managed to keep our opinions about this new version of her to ourselves because we really don't want any drama. But a couple of days back, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I had to ask her to leave because of something that happened while we were away on an overnight trip. My cousin was getting married, and so I had to be there with my family. The venue was a couple of hours away, so we were staying there overnight. She just had to spend one night by herself because we would be back the next day. My husband and I honestly did not think that there was anything that could possibly go wrong. But the next day, when we came back, I realized that the fridge was entirely empty when I tried to get some food after the trip. When we had left, it had a lot of stuff because we like to keep things in stock. But when I opened the fridge after the trip, it was completely empty. I'm not even kidding. There was literally nothing. And I almost thought that maybe the fridge had been robbed. But of course, that was not what had happened. The only person who had been at home was my sister-in-law. So I confronted her, and she did not even deny it. She told me that she had emptied the fridge the previous night while we were not at home because she was planning on starting a special diet. She wanted to avoid showing for as long as she could, since she did not want to miss out on any modeling assignments just because of a bump or weight gain. She knew that I would never approve of throwing everything away in the trash, so that's why she had chosen to do it at a time when I was not going to be at home. From the way she was talking about all of it so casually, it was very obvious that she did not feel any sort of remorse for what she had done. She thought that it was completely fine for her to empty somebody else's fridge. Mind you, the food items that she had thrown away were probably worth a considerable amount of money as well. So, it wasn't just food that had been wasted. It was our hard-earned money that had gone to waste because she wanted to go on some sort of special diet. She did not think that it was necessary to discuss this with the people whose money she was living off of. When I asked her about the diet, she told me that she was planning on going completely plant-based eventually. But before that, she wanted to do a detox. She felt that watching us have real food while she was living off of juice was going to make it very difficult for her to stick to her regime. So, she had to make sure that we all stuck to the same diet as she did. I was shocked at the level of entitlement and stupidity because not only was this regime extremely dangerous for a pregnant woman, who needs all the nutrients that she can possibly get, but she had also forgotten to factor in our son, who couldn't possibly live off of juice, even in a situation like that. When she was speaking about all of this so casually, and was acting like this was a totally normal thing to do while living with somebody else's family, I tried to keep my cool with her. I told her that what she had done was simply not acceptable and that she would have to replace everything that she had thrown away. I thought it was a reasonable enough request, and I tried to sound as polite as I could, even though I was really upset. But she decided to make things worse for herself by looking at me, smiling smugly, and telling me that she had done the right thing for the family because I could do with losing some weight too. That's where I lost it, because she had already messed up by throwing away all our food, which we had purchased with our money, and now she was body-shaming me. I didn't even bother screaming at her. I just went into her room and started packing her things. My husband and my son were in the other room, but they came to the guest room when they heard my sister-in-law shouting at me at the top of her lungs and trying to get me to stop. But I just kept grabbing her stuff and shoving them into her bags and told her that she was no longer welcome to live with us anymore, because she was clearly not the person that I thought I had invited to stay over. She was no longer the sweet, quiet girl we used to know. She had turned into the spoiled and entitled brat, and I had no interest in helping her out anymore. So since she knew what was good for the family and was so confident about what was good for her, I was sure that she would be able to find a place for herself in the city. She definitely did not need our help anymore, just like we did not need hers. She started crying while I was ranting, but that did not affect me because the past 2 months had been nothing short of insufferable because of her. Every second that my husband and I had spent at home was really difficult for us because this new version of her was the kind of person who liked making other people miserable, probably because she herself felt like that. But I was done with that now, and I wanted to go back to having a normal life with my husband and my son. She kept trying to drag my husband into the argument, but he just said nothing and went back into his room with our son while I packed my sister-in-law's bags for her. Once I was done, I started making my way to the door of the house so I could force her out. After I had kept all her bags on the front lawn, she started crying even harder than she had before and told me that she was not going to go anywhere. But still, she refused to apologize. If she had just said that she was sorry about everything, I might have reconsidered what I was doing. But at that moment, I was so angry that I grabbed her by the arm and pushed her out of the house. Then I shut the door. She stood outside and kept crying for another 20 minutes or so. But then I heard a car pull up, and then she was gone. The next day, I found out that it had been her boyfriend who had picked her up, and right now she was staying with him. I don't know why that couldn't have been arranged right from the beginning. But anyway, the problem is that right now, I don't feel bad about anything that I did. My in-laws, however, think that I should feel bad about the way I kicked her out of the house while she was pregnant. They think that the way I behaved was a total overreaction. Personally, I don't think that's the case because my resentment and anger against her had been building up right from when she moved in. The only reason I hadn't confronted her about her behavior was because I was afraid of something like this happening. I had tried my very best to keep my cool and not do anything that would hurt people's feelings, but I think that she had pushed me to act like that, and I can't be sorry for it. Besides, if anybody does owe somebody else an apology, I think it's my sister-in-law because whatever she did, it was just stupid and crazy. However, my in-laws refuse to see it that way, and they keep insisting that I need to talk to her and apologize to her for the way I behaved, because it was completely unnecessary in their opinion. In my opinion, though, I think she had been cruising for a bruising for the past 2 months, and she should have realized that if she kept testing our limits, this was definitely going to happen at some point. We are all still human beings, after all, not some different, higher form of life who are capable of forgiving everything and moving on. My husband doesn't have a strong opinion on this. He thinks that what I did happened in the heat of the moment and that I was a little too harsh in my treatment of her while I was kicking her out. I will agree with that, but her getting kicked out was something that was bound to happen at some point, if not by me, then perhaps by him. So, he doesn't really think that I have to be sorry about anything, but he also doesn't think that his parents are being totally unreasonable by calling it an overreaction since he does think that I could have been a bit more gentle. So, ITA for kicking my pregnant sister-in-law out of the house after she emptied all the contents of my fridge into the trash overnight? Update. It has been 9 days since I kicked my sister-in-law out of the house, and after arguing with my in-laws for a couple of days, I decided to stop responding to them because I really didn't have anything to say to them anymore. If they really don't see any problem with their daughter's behavior, I don't think I can force them to see it. As for my husband, he does think that I was a little too rough while handling the situation, and I do agree with that. But apart from that, he doesn't exactly expect me to apologize for anything because he doesn't think that whatever I did was uncalled for. So, he and I are completely fine. I'm not worried about that. We haven't heard from my sister-in-law ever since she had her boyfriend pick her up from here, and I'm assuming that she's still living with him, so good for her. I guess my son was a little confused as to what had happened, but thankfully, he hadn't been asking about her. It was a pity that she had to be kicked out like this because, surprisingly, she did not get along well with our son anyway. I did what I had to do, and I'm not going to sit here and overthink it. Also, obviously, we had to replace all the food that had been thrown away, and she did not send us any money for that, no surprises there. But one thing I'm sure of, if my in-laws, or heaven forbid, my sister-in-law herself, dare to show up again, I'm definitely going to be demanding that the money that needs to be paid back to us. Because this kind of behavior is not acceptable, and it's not going to fly with me. The last couple of messages that my in-law sent me were 2 days back, and since then, because I have stopped responding, they haven't bothered me. But the last couple of messages also say that I should apologize to my sister-in-law and at least try to clear the air with her, even if I don't allow her to move back in with us. Obviously, I'm not doing that. I think it's absurd that they expect me to apologize to her after the way she's behaved here. She has been entitled and ungrateful, and ever since she has left, the environment of the house has improved considerably. I like it this way. It is sad that this fight is even taking place because, so far, I've always gotten along well with my in-laws. But if they really don't see my point here, then there's hardly anything that I can do. My husband is free to keep in touch with them because I don't expect him to cut them off over something like this. I don't think it's that big of a deal yet, but so far, even he has said that he doesn't really feel like talking to them right now because all they want to talk about is my behavior with his sister, and he doesn't want to keep having the same conversation over and over again with them. Update 2:1 week has passed since my last update here, and yesterday, my in-laws showed up at my house in the evening. I will be honest. My husband and I had really not been expecting that because, like I had mentioned in my last update, they had stopped texting me after I started ignoring them. Since then, they hadn't bothered to text me, so I really didn't think that they were going to show up here so soon, just to deal with this situation. Right now, I thought that we had dropped it, but last evening, when I saw them outside my house and had to let them in, I realized that they were not going to let this go until they came to the kind of conclusion that they wanted. My son was obviously quite happy to see his grandparents, but they didn't even give him enough time. Usually, when they visit, the first hour of their visit is fully dedicated to our son and playing with him. But this time, they gave him attention for only a couple of minutes and then told us that they wanted to speak to us in private. They didn't want to discuss these things in front of our son, so I had my husband take my son into his room because I did not think that his parents were here to speak to him. Anyway, they were probably able to speak to me, and I really wanted to put an end to this whole thing once and for all, so I decided to sit with them and talk it out. They had the same complaints all over again, that I had been a little too harsh and that I had really hurt my sister-in-law's feelings, which is why they feel like I should apologize to her. They also think that my reaction was a bit too extreme if we actually think about the situation. They believe that, as the older one in this situation, I should have handled it better. So then, I also put my points forward, which I had already done before. I told them that the particular incident after which I had kicked her out had been the last straw for me. Even before that, she had been entitled and terrible to live with. If they didn't believe me, they could speak to their own son and confirm it. But her behavior had been really bad throughout her stay here, and I was not willing to apologize to her because I really did not think that I had overreacted. So, I might have been a bit too harsh, but honestly, she totally had it coming. We had already had these discussions before on the phone, so it felt like we were speaking in circles. After I had kept my side forward, my in-laws went silent for a couple of minutes and then said that even if I had been angry because of her behavior, I should have thought about how this would affect the family before taking such an extreme step like kicking her out. They told me that they could understand that I did not approve of her behavior or whatever she had said to me that day. But what I had done was still quite extreme. Regardless of what she had said and done, she was still a member of my family, and I should have taken that into consideration. I thought that it was not really valid because you can't just forgive everything and everyone simply because they are family. With my sister-in-law, things have gotten to a point where I felt like I had to take a stand for myself, so that's what I did. I reminded my in-laws that I might have forgiven her that instant if she had bothered to at least apologize to me. But she did not think that it was important, which is why she ended up getting kicked out. The bottom line was that I was not going to pretend that I was sorry and apologize to her, because that would be fake. I don't feel sorry about anything right now. I said it in a very final sort of way because I had to work really hard to keep my temper under control while they were acting as if I was the bad guy in this situation all along. I was getting exhausted from speaking about the same thing over and over again, so I hoped that they would take the hint, and thankfully they did. They realized that I was not willing to discuss this any further, and I had made up my mind that I was not going to be apologetic for anything that had happened. After that, they went silent again for a couple of minutes and then just abruptly got up and left without even saying goodbye. I was caught a bit off guard by that, but I said nothing. Let them leave. It was obvious that they were not happy with my decision or the discussion that we had just had. But I had made up my mind and I had made things very clear to them. After they left, I told my husband how they had left as well as the discussion that we had had. Now both of us think that we had said whatever it is that we had to say, and there's nothing more that we want to add. So, if they can come to terms with the fact that I'm not sorry, then good for them. If not, then that's not our problem anymore. Update 3. So after my in-laws visited us 2 days back, we did not have any contact with them, and we thought that this had finally blown over. But once again, we were proven wrong by them. I really don't understand what their problem is, but they are taking things way too far. Because now they have reached out to my parents to speak to them, just so they can get me to apologize. A couple of hours ago, my mom called me up and told me that my in-laws had shown up at their place to discuss what was going on with the family. Apparently, they had told my parents that I was being way too egoistic and narcissistic, and that my decision not to apologize to my sister-in-law was going to break the family apart. But I don't even seem to care about that. They approached my parents so they could talk some sense into me because the way that I behaved with them the other day, when they visited, was also quite rude. They think that I'm becoming arrogant and more difficult to deal with every passing day. So something needs to be done about my behavior. I was furious when my mother was telling me about all of this on the phone, but unfortunately, she was calling Follow Me after they had already left. So I couldn't exactly go over to confront them about what they were doing. Thankfully, though, my parents did not really engage with them much and just told them that they didn't think it was their place to be interfering at this point. Because I was a grown woman, and I knew what was best for me. My in-laws did not seem to be happy with that response, but they left without saying much, just that they would appreciate it if my parents spoke to me about it and got me to realize that family was more important than my ego. I think it's really ironic coming from them because, at this point, I don't even think that it's about an apology anymore. I think it's about getting their way and forcing me to live by their rules. And they are only unhappy that I'm not being a total puppet for them. Well, they can continue to be unhappy because my husband and I have just decided that we are going to completely cut ties with them. This is more than enough, and I think I had been respectful enough when they visited us last. But since they have chosen to lie about it and claim that I was disrespectful, I think I'm going to live up to that now. So far, I actually have been trying to deal with everything peacefully and not create more drama out of nothing. But I'm just exhausted now. I can't really force myself to care about their feelings constantly, especially when they're being so insensitive towards my feelings, and they're even being disrespectful towards my family. So, my husband and I are done, and I really don't think we're going to be seeing or speaking to them anytime soon, not even if they apologize. We need some space and time away from them, so we're going to make sure that we do not have anything to do with them moving forward. Update 4. Hello guys! So a couple of weeks have passed since our last update. Since then, we have blocked my in-laws. A couple of days after my last update, my in-laws reached out to me once again and sent me a text saying that my sister-in-law and her boyfriend had decided to get a place of their own, so she would not need to come back again. But apparently, she had left some stuff of hers back in the guest room that I had missed while packing for her, so she would send her boyfriend over to collect it. I replied to them saying that I was fine with it, and then they sent me another message saying that they were really disappointed in me. They also mentioned that they had visited my parents, but my family did not seem to be invested in making sure that the family stayed intact. This whole visit here had been a terrible experience for them because they had finally seen a side of me that they had never even considered was there, since I had turned out to be pretty egoistic and selfish. After that message, I did not even bother to reply to them. I just blocked them. I had heard these things before as well, since that's exactly what they had said to my parents. They could have just told me that my sister-in-law's boyfriend would come over to collect some things of hers and ended it there, but I guess they couldn't help themselves but try to make me feel guilty anyway. After I blocked them, they didn't try to get in touch with me again, and neither can they get in touch with my husband, since he has also blocked them. I didn't tell him to do so. He did it of his own will. But I'm sure that they will find a way to make it about me. And 3 days back, my sister-in-law's boyfriend finally showed up to collect her things. But the surprising fact was that she had also come with him. But all she did was just stand right outside the house and refuse to step in. And when her boyfriend came out of the guest room with all her stuff in a box, she made a whole show of repeatedly making sure that everything was there, as if we were thieves. Then she finally left, and we shut the door behind her. Hopefully, now they will finally all leave me alone and get off my back. Either way, it doesn't really matter because I know that I have my husband by my side, and their opinions don't really count for me. I'm happy without any contact with them.